Board of Education regular meeting Tuesday, September 8th at 5:30. Just for your information, our meeting has been moved up in recognition of our annual meeting that's at 7 o'clock. So we're going to try to proceed through this meeting as quickly as we can. So all the board members have a copy of the agenda. Before we start in with the agenda, I'd ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the members of the board have a copy of the agenda in front of them on their laptops. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Lynn.
Second.
Second by Barb. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion's approved. We'll move on next to the superintendent's report. Mary?
Good evening, everyone. At your places, I believe, is a revised copy of the start of school enrollment. So if you would check for that and refer to that instead of what you would find. And we're going to be accompanied during the start of school enrollment, so it should be interesting. So don't refer to the information that is in Diligent board books. Instead, look at the paper copy because we've updated numbers and they provide more information for us. Oh, Diligent has been updated? Okay, well, forget what I just said and go to Diligent. All right, what we have done since the first copy you saw is we updated enrollment numbers as of today. And as a result of that, we have what we believe to be as accurate as can be based on information as of today instead of the first day of school, which we were first starting with. So as we look at elementary enrollment, the number of students who are enrolled is 2,513, and when we compare that to the official count, we are up 51 students. And again, I want to emphasize that the count that you see in front of you for the 2009-10 year is not an official count and will change by the official count day, September 18th, 2009. So we will update enrollment at the October meeting. So elementary is up based on our information as of today, up 51 students, again, not official. The middle school and their enrollment is estimated 95 students over capacity and up 46 students. So up at both elementary and middle school. And then the high school up an estimated 4 students, so essentially close to the same. And if these numbers hold true for the September 18th count, we would be up a total of 101 students K-12. I just want to point out that these enrollment numbers include the K-12 Hudson resident students and open enrolled students who have come into the district and additional year tuition waiver students. It does not include our early childhood students. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those. I know Nancy's going to talk about staffing and update us on that in a few minutes.
Mary, can I just ask one question? The enrolled numbers that you show school on those first few days?
That's a great question. When we compare it to the first numbers you've got, certainly this includes the enrolled students and those students who are absent, and we know about them, so they are still enrolled. And so that's why we changed the numbers, because these were more accurate than those original numbers, which included students who were enrolled, but we didn't know the situation with each one of them yet. All right, I'll just move on to High School of the Future Research Study. This is, as you would remember, one of our long-term, or our goals for the school year, and this is long-term planning. And so what we have bringing together is a team of people to study future-focused high school models that really align with our HSD 2025 vision and strategic plan and implementing the graduate learner outcomes of that plan. And so we're bringing together a team this year to research and study future-focused high schools around the country, both certainly in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, close to us, but other locations as well, and looking at those models for their organization and structure to align with our vision. And as you look down at the charge for this work, certainly it's to research and analyze best practice high school models that I talked about, aligned with 21st century learning skills and our strategic vision. It's also to develop a plan for staff and community engagement and learning about the work of this research team, and then to present to you recommendations for the organization and structure. If you look to the next page and the membership of the team, this team, Barb Van Lunen, as chair of the Learning and Program Development Committee, will be representing the board. Then we have a number of administrators. We also have elementary and middle school administration recommended as members of this team, so that we have built in good transitions with our other levels. And then we have 8 teachers, 2 students, parent representatives, and community business representatives as well. And you can see that some of those names have not yet been filled in, but we're working on that at the present time. Tracy Habish-Aline, as she did with HSD 2025 team, will be our facilitator for this work. And the last page talks about the timeline. And as you can see, this evening's update to the board is included. Our first meeting is September 22nd, and we are alternating our meetings between afternoon, morning, and evenings for everyone on the team's convenience. And we will be updating the board December 8th and March 9th with the recommendation to the board August 10th. You notice that multiple site visit reports are included, and we will be sending out teams. When the location is closer to us, we will send multiple people on the teams and send larger teams when possible. When we may have to travel some distance, we will be sending, our plan is right now to send teams of 2 to those locations and bring information back to the board, or back to this team. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. This work is really important as we look forward to moving and implementing HSD 2025 and making it a reality in our school district, particularly at the high school level.
Thanks, Mary. Any questions for Mary?
Mary, I was wondering if you can speak to how the site visit list will be compiled, or what information you'll use to know what sites will be put on the list.
Well, we've already been collecting various information from schools, different high schools. And we will be looking at the team members to also bring in any recommendations they have about different schools. And then we will be looking at those schools both as a team, total team, and then making decisions about which ones to visit.
Ryan?
Couple questions. How will you select the community business members? How's that going to be? Because I have had some interest from community members on this. How they get notified? How does that work?
Well, we have a planning team who has met, which included Sandy Kovac, Ed Lucas, Tracy Habish-Aline, myself, and we have talked about various community partners that we felt could approach.
Okay.
You know, the good news about this team, particularly when we talk about the teachers, is Principal Ed Lucas has said that there is a lot of interest by teachers to be part of this team. And unfortunately, it is still a large team with 20-some members, but we are very excited that teachers at the high school level are excited about being on the team, and I think others in the community, we hope, would be as well.
Okay, so if someone from the community is interested in participating, should they contact your office?
Yes, and do that as quickly as possible, because we are moving forward with
and what's
invitations.
the deliverable on the on August 10th, 2010? What is it that is going to be delivered? What's the recommendation? What's the template for it?
Well, I'm not sure yet at this time what that's going to look like, because that's going to depend on the work of the team and as we move forward. So I don't want to get in the way of the team members being part of that conversation. But essentially, we may come back with one model we think is the best model as a recommendation to you to adopt and start to move forward in organization and structure of the high school to implement HSD 2025. Or we may come back with 2 to 3 models and say, here are the advantages of this model, here are the advantages of this model, here is the downside, and so forth.
Okay, I'd like to kind of keep up on that. What's actually going to be, this is going to cost, there's a lot of people involved, resources. I just like to stay part of what's actually going to get delivered. So.
If you have any recommendations on that or ideas, I'd be...
Not yet, but I will after.
Okay. All right. Well, and that's one
time.
reason we're having the updates, Brian, so that you can weigh in on them, but feel free to do that in between as well.
And just my last comment is lots of people on this
team.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes it can get more members can add some value, but also sometimes it's hard to make decisions when you have too many people. So
that was a dilemma, a challenge, as we talked about the composition of the team and trying to keep it small enough to actually function and yet large enough for enough people to be involved. So yes, you're pointing out some of the challenges that we certainly discussed.
Okay. I think we'll keep moving along here since we have a finite amount of time. Sandy, are you going to lead us through the ACT, AP results?
Yes, thank you. Tonight we bring before you some information regarding ACT and AP results. AP stands for Advanced Placement. These were just recently made available, and in some instances we'll have to update you again once we have some state and national comparisons. That's not all available for us this evening. We'll begin with ACT results. And ACT is the preferred admissions test of college and universities really in this area. You'll find the SAT more likely on the coast, but the ACT is preferred in this area. And the subjects that students are tested on include English, reading, math, and then science reasoning. And what you see before you is the composite score of those 4 assessments. And you can see over time from 05-06, our score 23.2, 2 years with 23.7, and then again now in 08-09 at 23.3. You can see the state, partly because of larger numbers, has held their own pretty much with 22.3 over the past 4 years. I did speak with a statistician at ACT, and we do know that the margin of error is about 0.48. And so if you take that on both sides of 23.3, anywhere then between 23.78 to 22.82 would be within that range. So even though 23.3 looks a little lower, it does fall within that margin of error. On the next slide, we have now several comparisons. And first we'll begin with our own CISA 11. And you need to pay attention, please, to the center, the composite score, because I do have those then ranked from highest to lowest. And you can see that Hudson, when we look at our CISA 11 schools, we are right at the top with 23.3, and I believe we're ranked second when it comes to the number of students that are tested. The ACT tends to be a junior-senior test. There's about 25 to 28% of our juniors and our seniors that do take the test. Then we'll follow with a comparison of our Big Rivers Conference, and again, looking at the composite score and ranking from high to low. You can see that Hudson, again, in our conference, ranks number 1. Then, as in the past, we look at high-performing districts throughout the state. Again, looking at composite score. And these schools, again, are the ones that we keep trying to compete with. And we looked at our WKCE, and we're making gains in those areas. And now this is another area we continue to strive for both improvement in our composite score against these high performers and the percent tested. I want you to also just notice, especially Elmbrook. Elmbrook has 2 high schools, Brookfield Central. They're at 90.8% tested. And I talked to someone this morning at that school because I was wondering perhaps they require students to take it, and it's not. They have that many juniors and seniors taking the test. They also have about that percentage that are going on to a 2 or 4 year vocational school. So they are definitely one of the high performers that we need to compete with in our comparisons. As in the WKCE, the next slide will show you some comparisons with districts that really are more true to our size, just as another comparison point. And you can see again where Hudson falls this year at 23.3. And then you can kind of think about a year ago at 23.7 where we would be in the grid with that data point. When we look at advanced placement, the College Board's Advanced Placement Program enables students to pursue college-level studies while still in high school. And based on the performance of rigorous AP exams, which most of them take place in May of each year, students can earn credit for college. Now, Hudson High School currently offers 11 AP courses: studio art, chemistry, German, Spanish, calculus, physics, literature and composition, computer programming, U.S. history, psychology, and then our new addition this year, government. And you can see that there were 230 students that took 309 tests in May 2009. In the next slide, we're going to start looking at our data a little bit different with advanced placement, and that we really are striving, and I believe you'll see this next month with the SMART goals for the high school, we're really striving for increasing the number of students participating in rigorous courses. So you can see when we look from 2006 up to 2009 and the number of students in AP, yes, we are reaching that goal. We have 230 students in 2009, May 2009, that did take the AP assessment. 309 exams, and our percent passage is 87%. So another good piece. Now the next slide, Diane, can you go back 1 minute on that one? Thank you. I wanted to just say another column that we want to have, or a comparison point, is just to compare to the state. But again, the state results aren't available at this point. But did want to tell you that last year you can see we had 83% of our students pass the exam. The state had 67% as a state of Wisconsin. So a 16 percentage point difference. So a nice spread there in comparison to the state. All right, thanks, Diane. The next slide, though, is to really show when we start looking at the number of students taking AP exams, we also need to look at that in comparison to the number of students. So what we did is take the last 3 years, 07, 08, 09, and looked at the number of juniors and seniors taking at least one AP exam, then put in the number of juniors and seniors as by our January count, and then divided those two and came up then with what percent of our juniors or seniors took an AP exam. So we can see that we are increasing based on our numbers of students as well. And that's where we want to watch long term to make sure hopefully that number 27.5 continues to increase as more students are taking rigorous AP courses. And then the last slide shows us a little comparison of looking. The red line tells us, again,
the number of students that took an AP exam, and then the blue shows us the number of exams. And again, you can see over at least those 5 years, our trend is showing upward in the number of students, which is what we're really focused in on, and then comparing it to the number of exams. Open for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Any questions for Sandy?
Sandy, why do we see data that looks like the number of exams isn't correlating directly with the number of students that's dropped down last year? Do we have an idea of why that's happening?
I don't know exactly. It's some of it could be just the number of exams that each student has. They may be making choices. You know, if I'm in literature and composition and APUSH and chemistry, I may make choices of which AP exam I'm actually going to take. That's one piece we want to look at. We also want to look at economics and make sure that that's hopefully not a deterrent in taking that exam in May. And then it just falls into some students may decide just to focus on one exam versus several exams. And I'm just hypothesizing at the moment, but that's something we'll want to dig in further into the data. Thanks, Lynn.
Brian?
Is there any early data on the high-performing districts that we're benchmarking themselves against? Are they doing something unique in terms of their ACT scores to generate those types of results?
When I talked to Brookfield this morning, they have about 20 AP courses, and they're offering some courses for ACT. Now, Principal Ed Lucas last year did offer, he shared with Learning and Program, he did offer some online support with minimal success, but is doing a stronger marketing program this year to get more students in practicing ACT-type questions before they take the test. Most of them will take it either in December and or in the spring.
So are those schools, the one that you talked to today, are they offering ACT preps as part of their curriculum?
Not part of their curriculum, before or after school. Mm-hmm.
Sandy, Brian, in response to your question, one of the things that Sandy alluded to was we have to look at the percent of their students that go on to college, and that will correlate or should correlate with AP courses as well. We want to increase that percentage in Hudson along with this, but that's one thing that we need to look at and look at that correlation as well as the practices that you're talking about.
Cindy?
Sandy, in terms of measuring your goal, as the population of our high school, our junior and senior classes fluctuates, you would also expect the number of students participating in AP to fluctuate, all things being equal. So I would appreciate when you come back to us in the coming years with updates on this, I'd like to see the percentage of the classes that are participating in AP rather than the actual number increase. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's a better measure of us having an impact on our student body, okay, as opposed to just the number in the class goes up. And,
yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Diane, can you go back one slide?
It's there. It's there, but when you talk about the goal,
yep,
it's there, but when you talk about the goal, you talk about increasing the number of students.
True.
And I'm trying to change that discussion to be a discussion of the
percentage of students. Thank you. I'm following. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Any other questions?
Just one comment. This is such an important part of of the process to get into a quality school. I just think I'd love to see kind of a plan besides the opportunistic. I think that's a good first step, but a concrete plan to get us to where we want to go on these things.
Okay.
So that's something that coming out of the what would that come out of? A plan on this, a goal and a plan. Will it come out of a committee or?
I would think there'll be a joint one, Principal Ed Lucas and Peg Shoemaker and I, because I think it will come with the SMART goal and then the work of learning services.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sandy. We'll move on to topics for action. Tim's going to...
Staffing update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
0910 staffing update, Nancy.
Yeah, just some very brief comments. Since the July board meeting, the administration has increased the 60% grade 5 teacher at Holton to full-time, and we eliminated the part-time educational assistant assigned to that class. Since the July meeting, the enrollment in that grade level increased from 30 to 34 students. Elementary enrollment taken on August 19th and then presented to the Personnel Committee the week after showed continued elementary growth, but it also showed more class size balance across the district between the schools. There are no grade levels. There were no grade levels over our maximum guidelines, and there were fewer grade levels that were at or near maximum, and also fewer that were under the minimum. So although there was growth, the balance, it seemed to be better balanced. We are not recommending additional staffing positions at the elementary level at this time. The middle school enrollment also shows continued growth, particularly at the 6th and the 8th grade levels. And again, we're not recommending additional staffing, but we are keeping a close eye on 6th grade enrollment in the higher math program and physical education and health at both the 6th and 8th grade levels. In each of those classes at those grade levels, the average class size is above our maximum guidelines. And then although enrollment has grown at the 9th and 10th grade level, overall at the high school, it's pretty much stayed the same. As Mary reported earlier, that was similarly true in the middle of August, and at this time we are not recommending any additional staff positions at the high school. So in summary, of the 3 teacher positions approved by the board last spring, the administration has allocated 1 of those positions, with 2 remaining for allocation if needed as we move through the school year.
Any questions for Nancy?
Questions at all? Okay, that's in a nutshell. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Now we'll move on to topics for action. Tim, the 0910 budget for the annual meeting.
Okay. If you turn to your on diligent, you've got the revenues by fund and the expenditures by fund, and a summary of each one of those. And I'll just highlight the different funds here and what they're used for. The general fund accounts for all of the activities of the district, other than the ones in the funds below. So that's pretty easy. It's certainly the biggest one. The numbers going across, the 07-08 are audited figures. 08-09 are unaudited at this point. The audit has been substantially completed. However, the audit report hasn't been issued, so we have to deem those figures as unaudited at this point. And then 9-10 is a revised budget. Fund 21 holds the accounting for the different types of grants that the district may receive from the Education Foundation and other organizations. Fund 27 is special education, accounts for all the costs and operation of special education. Fund 39 is voter-approved bonds, which is the debt service for the district, and that's another part of the levy. The 2 levies are general fund and the debt service levy. Fund 49 is capital projects fund, and that accounts for capital or construction projects of a large nature, such as Rivercrest Elementary. So you can see some of the figures going across there. There's nothing obviously in 9-10 for that. Food service fund accounts for just that, food service. And then Fund 80 and 81 are community service, and it's broken apart by community service activities and then school age care activities. And then Fund 95 is our vocational co-op funds, and that actually accounts for a Department of Workforce Development grant. And then underneath that, you can see the expenditures by fund, and we'll get into a little more detail on that in the following pages. If you go to the next page, the proposed budget adoption breaks down the general fund by revenues and other financing sources. And if you look at line 210, the second line down, taxes or the real estate taxes that are levied for operations of the general fund. And this is the budget for 910 is $23,843,000 levy for the general fund. And then moving down, there includes interest on investments, school activity income, and other revenue items there. Moving down to state sources, you can see it's important to note when we're looking at state sources, there's state aid, and in 0809, $22,798,000 was received in state aid. And if you go down to the next section, federal sources, 710, there is $2,955,000 that was received from the state as part of their stimulus package that Wisconsin received from the federal government. So what they did was they replaced some of our state aid with the federal funds they received. So it's a revenue neutral item. It didn't result in any additional revenue to the district. But if you compare those two numbers, the 620 at $22,798,000, and then you add the 710 federal source aid at $2,955,000, and compare that to then going back to the 910 budget, $23,035,000, there is a 10.4% drop in state aid over the previous year, and that's our largest piece of our funding, the impact to our funding. Moving on, there are some other areas of revenue, a little bit more minor in nature, but brings our total revenues budgeted to $48,376,000 versus the 0809 revenues of $50,858,000. If we move down to expenditures and other financing sources, the budget is presented in a programmatic nature. So it goes through undifferentiated curriculum and regular curriculum. It includes all of the salaries, benefits, supplies, equipment to operate the general fund. And then there are also support sources, there are pupil services, instructional staff, the general administration. Under 250 business administration, that holds some of the dollars that we put in 0809, or actually 0708 and 0809 for the construction of Rivercrest. And so those dollars are not there for the 910 budget year, so you'll see a corresponding drop. Going on to the next page, the inter-fund transfers for 10 is what the general fund actually covers for special education when you compare their total revenue sources for special education versus the expenditures. So, and that amount has gone down because we did receive federal revenue, federal stimulus revenue for special education, and we're spending that there. So you can see a corresponding drop in the amount that the general fund then picks up for special education. Moving down, total expenditures, if you look at the 0809, a total of $49,683,000 versus the 910 budget of $49,426,000. So you see a slight decrease there. And keeping in mind, there were budget reductions of $2,350,000 in the 910 budget. As we move down to net changes in fund balance, for 0809, we're preliminary, of course, because these are unaudited. At this point, the audit isn't finished, but looks like we're going to wind up the 0809 year with $1,175,000 to the positive, so that would add $1,175,000 to our fund balance, and that would project the fund balance at the end of 0809 to be $16,896,000. Of course, fund balances contains cash items, receivables, It's the piece of the budget that we use to cover our ups and downs in aid and tax receipts that we don't receive ratably throughout the year. If you look across to the 9-10 budget, we're proposing to use $1,050,000 of fund balance for 9-10 and drop the designated fund balance down to $15,846,000. Moving on to the Special Projects Fund, and that's a combination of the Funds 21, which are grant-related, and Fund 27, which is special education-related. And I won't go through all of those numbers in detail because I know you've seen them before. Debt service, again, as more of a normal year for the 9-10 budget. We did some refinancing and issued new bonds for the construction of Rivercrest in 2007, 2008, and then refinanced some bonds in 2008, 2009. Capital Projects Fund, again, those contain the cost for the construction of Rivercrest Elementary. Then moving on to the next page. We've got food service and then community service, and that's combined for those funds 80 and 81 that you saw on the very first page, and then our package and cooperative fund that holds the Department of Workforce Development grant. And then some additional information on the trust fund activity. The district did establish a trust a few years back to account for other post-employment benefits, and we are funding those benefits. And you can see the investments and the disbursements out of that account. And then the ending balance for June 30th of 2009 stands at about just a little over $1 million. And moving on to the next page, we have a presentation on the long-term debt of the school district, and this accounts for the long-term debt and the debt service fund and the debt service levy. And it just goes through each one of our bonds that we have outstanding right now and the different principal and interest amounts that will be paid in 2009, 2010. And then on to the final page. Final page gives the historical mill rate and then a preliminary valuation for the mill rate for 2009-10. And we say preliminary at this point because that's what it is. The Department of Public Instruction and the Department of Revenue don't issue final numbers for us on state aid until October. And so we get the state aid in October, and we also get the final district valuation in October. But if we jump down to the bottom of that section, 2009, 2010, you can see we're projecting that the district valuation district-wide will drop by about 2.5%. The total levy, and that's going to be for the general fund and for the debt service fund, would total $28,400,000, and that would be an increase of 8.25%. And then the mill rate stands at 7.82 for a percentage change of 11.06% in the mill rate. You can also see the breakdown of the taxing by district. And there have been some sizable decreases in valuation looking at those districts. And again, this is an estimate at this point in time until the numbers become final in October. So, any questions?
Any questions for Tim? I have a quick one, Tim. Looking at this long-term debt schedule, when you look out over the next 6 to 12 months, do we have any bonds that may be eligible for refinancing, you know?
Yeah, that's something that we review as the rates bounce around here and get to their lows. There are some, unfortunately, we have some restrictions on how often we can refinance or what's called refunding of a bond. But we do check that from time to time, and we did refinance back, I believe it was July of 2008 on one of our issues. So we do continue to look at that.
Okay. Any other questions, board members?
Question.
Brian?
So, Tim, when do we certify the levy?
Levy gets certified in October, so it'll be the, I believe it's the October 27th board meeting.
So some of these numbers may change between now and the end of October.
Absolutely, right. Yeah, we'll continue to work on the budget. We'll also get, like I say, when the state the state has to get all of their data in statewide for school districts to determine what this exact state aid amount will be. And then they look at our September student count and go from there. So, and then also the Department of Revenue has their final valuation for the district at that time.
So the actual levy amount could be determined by different funding changes, right? Could be also changes in the budget presented here would affect the levy.
Right. We could have a couple different things that could happen. The funding changes, the formula is set at this point by the state, but it's now as a matter of the state collecting all of the information.
Okay. Cindy?
Tim, this schedule of having to bring a budget forward and certify a levy before the actual concrete numbers are in from the state regarding our property valuations as well as our state aid. This is a usual calendar, is that right? I mean, every year we're making this decision in the with ambiguous.
This is the usual process that we do go through in Wisconsin. A little unusual in that if we look at many other states, they have budgets. School districts have budgets passed by their fiscal start at July 1. We don't have a final until October. So.
Okay. No other questions, comments? This is a topic for action. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of the budget as presented.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the budget as presented by the administration.
We have a motion by Barb. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Tom. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion's approved 7-0. We'll move on to new policy, academic accommodations for religious beliefs.
Okay, on page 23 of your board material then, academic accommodations for religious beliefs. This is a policy that is required by law, which we didn't previously have. It is an adaptation of a policy that was provided to all of the school districts by the Department of Public Instruction, and we did adapt their sample. And this policy did go through review by the Governance and Policy Committee on August 10th. It relates to non-discrimination of religious beliefs, and it does reference our existing policy on non-discrimination and the complaint procedure associated with it.
Thanks, Nancy. This is pretty much following the statutory guidelines. Okay, any questions for Nancy? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the policy.
I move to approve this policy.
Motion by Cindy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Barb. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Next item is the consent items. You see the list of items on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion on the approval of the consent items, and if someone could state the expenditures amount along with that.
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda items, including a motion that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $1,728,930.74.
We have a motion by Barb.
Second.
Second by Cindy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved. We'll move on next to committee reports. Personnel and Negotiations Committee. Mark?
Thanks, Dan. Personnel Committee met August 26th, discussed 09-10 enrollment and staffing updates. That
Excuse me, Mark.
Sure.
Let me take a look at, I'm going off of two agendas here. One's written and one's on the digital here. And I think we have we do have a YMC Camp St. Croix expenditure that we need to take action on. Tom Holland will be stepping out a second while we vote on that. Apologize. Tom Holland has left. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of the YMCA Camp St. Croix expenditures. Does anybody have the dollar amount?
I move we approve YMCA camp expenditures in the amount of $1,250.
Okay, we have a motion by Cindy.
Second.
Second by Brian. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. And Tom, if you can come back in. Okay. Mark, sorry about that. We'll
No, that's all right, Dan.
get to the report.
Met on the 26th of August, Personnel Committee discussed 09-10 enrollment and staffing updates. I think Ms. Sweet covered that earlier. And then discussed changes to the domestic partner law here in the state of Wisconsin, and also changes to the WRS, that's Wisconsin Retirement System law changes, and how they affect our staff, support staff specifically. And after that, we had closed session regarding a performance evaluation of an employee and deliberation for negotiations with all employee groups.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Any questions, comments for Mark? If not, we'll accept that report. Finance Committee, Brian?
Finance Committee met twice, been busy. The first was a proposal for banking services. We basically went out to competitive bid for our banking services to make sure we're getting the right value, and we should be responding to those bids over the next week or so.
We have.
Okay. So then we prepared for the annual meeting, and we just went through our audit update. That's on track, and we should be getting the results from that when the audit report.
We're expecting it in October.
Okay. And then met in closed sessions to discuss labor negotiations with our bargaining units.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Any questions, comments for Brian? If not, we'll accept those reports as well. Thank you. We do have a citizen's request to speak. Bob McClinsky on the topic of facilities issues. Bob, if you could step forward and state your name, address.
Bob McClinsky, 1301 Freer Street. The last time I spoke in front of this board, July, Mr. Kaiserschott reminded me that the referendum for Rivercrest Elementary School in 2006 passed by only 100 votes or so. Actually, I do not need to be reminded of that information. I'm well aware of the near failure of that referendum. Mr. Kaiserschott again stressed that we need to remember that the people in Hudson are different than the people in other towns. That is something I've heard him say many times before. Now, I don't want to dredge up history from 3 years ago, but since Mr. Kaiserschott brought up the 2006 referendum, I'd like to say a few words in response to his comments. This board and administration has come to the conclusion that the sole deciding factor in passing a referendum is the size of the referendum. The thinking is this: the smaller the amount you're asking for, the better the chance you have to pass the referendum, period. End of analysis. Your referendum for $25 million in 2003 failed, so you tried again in 2006 for a much lesser amount, $11 million, and that passed, but just barely. So based on that, what do you think you need to do to get a referendum victory of a higher percentage? I imagine you would say that you need to go for an even smaller amount than 11 million. Yet at the same time that you were asking for 11 million in 2006, the New Richmond School Board and Superintendent were asking their citizens for 92 million to build a new high school, a new elementary school, to convert the old high school to a middle school, and to renovate an existing elementary school. New Richmond Superintendent Maury Vallot worked tirelessly to meet with the people in his community and explain this plan and explain their need, and guess what? He got a referendum victory of 57%. At the same time, your superintendent came within a hair's breadth of losing her $11 million referendum. We should also remember that at the same time, Woodbury passed a referendum for $149 million to build a new high school, among other things. And a few years before that, River Falls passed a large referendum for their new high school. And the only explanation that we've been given by this leadership group of this odd disparity between the towns is, quote, "The people of Hudson are different." And to that I say, baloney. You can't blame this fiasco on the people in this district. You have to take ownership of it. It isn't the citizens who are different. It's the fact that those other districts have school boards with vision and guts, building plans that make some sense, and superintendents who get the job done. Hudson does not have those things. Back in 2006, the citizens of Hudson wanted a comprehensive solution to take care of all K-12 space issues at that time. But you did not have the guts to give them that option. Instead, you gave them a referendum for one little elementary school. And the voting public tried hard to send you back to the drawing board for a new plan, just like they did in 2003. So stop blaming the citizens of Hudson and calling us different than the people of New Richmond and River Falls and Woodbury. It's not the people, it's the plan. And you got the plan wrong. Now, the students and the teachers in this pathetic excuse for a high school building that we are in right now have to live with the results of your poor judgment. At the last board meeting, the superintendent told me that I should be happy because you have finally decided to start talking about the high school of the future. Well, I'm not happy because your talk is just more talk. In the meantime, my daughter is a sophomore in this school, and let me tell you a few things about her experience here. Do you know that there are times that she and other students need to stand up holding their tray and eat their lunch because there's not enough places to sit down in the lunchroom? I wonder if any of you ever had to stand up and eat your high school lunch. I doubt it. When I went to her open house a couple weeks ago, I went to all 7 of her classrooms. 4 of the classrooms have no windows, not a single window in the entire room. 3 of the classrooms had one small window about this size. So no natural light gets inside this building. Like all the other students, she has to carry her 40-pound backpack around all day because of the poor layout of the corridors and the classrooms in this building. A few times each day, she takes the outdoor corridor to get from one side of the building to the other to avoid the crush of the overcrowded hallways. The temperatures in her classrooms range from unbearably hot to freezing cold. And she has a number of classes with class sizes in excess of 30 students. So no, I'm not happy with the fact that you are talking about a pie-in-the-sky 2025 fantasy high school while Woodbury opened its new high school this year and New Richmond will open their new high school next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. We have another request, Amanda and Carrie Lorenz. If you could step forward. Just a reminder, we're approaching our timeline for the annual meeting, so I'd appreciate it if your comments could be fairly short. You could state your name and address, please.
Amanda's a little shy tonight, but we're just here. Do we have to give our name first? Okay. Amanda Lorenz and Carrie Lorenz, 578 Spurline Circle, Hudson, Wisconsin, or the Township of Hudson.
Okay, thank you.
Well, okay. Amanda has been in the school system since she was 3 years old, starting her early childhood, ending as of this last June, and turning 21. So she's one of your students that has been here for quite a few years and achieved what we feel is quite a good thing, a wonderful thing. And we just wanted to tell you that we are so grateful for all the work that this school system has done to give Amanda the life that she has now. When Amanda first started school, she couldn't talk. She had many disabilities or things that were wrong, and we did not know what they were at the time. And through the help of the school system, they were able to give us the information that we needed to go forward with doctors that we needed in that. She has autism, and she was one of the first students to be in the autism programs in all the schools between Willow River Middle School and the high school. So what Amanda has achieved, we feel, is almost a miracle, and Nancy knows that well because Nancy worked with us through those years too. And then also our other children that Amanda was in school with, also in the CID programs, and Mrs. Shoemaker, the programs, like Jim Schreiber's class, what was that called? PD programs. And Amanda also was in the classes with those children too, all together. So we were very grateful for that. And I'll let Amanda
That's wonderful to hear.
now.
Amanda, do you have any comments?
Do you want to say it?
Go,
say it.
go ahead. We won't
She just
bite.
wanted to say thank you. And we wanted to say thank you to the Willow River School System, the North Hudson School System, EP Rock School System, Middle School System, the Hudson High School, the Adapted Phi Ed Department, the floor hockey, Student to Student, which was brought into the Hudson High School in the last 4 years, and was able to work, the regular children were able to work with our children and go to many events and take them there. And that was a really good thing, we felt also. The floor hockey program was for the children with disabilities from the time they're in 7th grade to the time they're in 12th grade, or after that 6 years. And I do believe that this is the only program that they have in this area of Wisconsin. And we were so thankful for the sports, because so many of our children see their brothers and sisters playing sports and never ever think they'd be able to do that. And the coaches worked hard, and the teachers worked hard, getting our children to EP Rock for their playing and everything. So we were really thankful for that. For the Bridge for Hudson Youth, for the Claiborne House that works with the school system, for the YMCA, for the Rotary, for the Knights of Columbus, for the Lions Club, for Denny's Restaurant. All these things have been able to work with our school system, and we are real thankful for that also. And I guess that's what we wanted to say. You may never see, sometimes I think teachers, and our teachers, first of all, our teachers too, all of our teachers and our aides, our nurses, our staff, our coaches, principals. Principals work directly with our children many, many times, helping them in many situations at all the schools. I don't think you always realize that. Besides the teachers work directly sometimes with the principal, helping us when there's difficult times in that. So there's many small things that I think people don't always realize, and we're thankful for that.
Great. Thank you again for those comments.
And I'm sorry, Amanda won't speak tonight. Normally she'll speak.
Okay.
But nighttime's a little different.
Amanda,
but thanks.
Amanda, thanks for coming up, and good luck. Thanks again. Okay, board administrator comments? Okay. Cindy?
Just one thing. I just want to congratulate Amanda for 18 years of really diligent work in our school district, and thanks.
Great. Thanks, Cindy.
Just a comment. It's an interesting dichotomy to hear the first speaker than the second one, and we certainly appreciate, where we are lacking in facilities, of course, and we'll work hard, and we have been working hard to remedy those situations. I hope there's nobody standing up eating lunch, but we'll check into that. But I think the bigger point is the second speaker, and in that we've heard also tonight about the great success that this district has because of its dedicated staff, because of outstanding citizens and parents and the support of this community. We should be proud of this district, and our schools, for the accomplishments that we make despite the facility issues. And so it's interesting in the study. Facilities certainly are important, and they do help in the delivery of a quality education. But I think this district is proving that it's not the only issue. It's not the only factor.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. We'll move on to last agenda item, to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent E, for the purpose of deliberating to prepare for negotiations with all union employee groups. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Lynn.
Second.
Second by Cindy. We'll have a voice vote.
Van Loon, aye.
Crimmins, aye.
Chernahoy, aye.
Holland, aye.
Kaiser shot aye.
Bell, aye.
Robson, aye.
Motion's approved. Thanks, everyone, for coming, and we'll be back at 7 o'clock for the annual meeting.